Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're so excited to be here to talk about the 2023-2024 Tween and Teen Book Club offerings. So if you have not met us before, I am Dr. Michelle Paranello-Cason,
And I'm Dr. Sabrina Weiss.
and we've been running is this our third, third year doing these? It's my I have one more year from before we paired up to start doing them. I think it's
I think
our
this is my third year.
Yeah, so I think it's our fourth year running them total, third year running them together. And it's just been such a joy to offer these tween and teen book clubs. We've really built a community of learners that come in and bring these very smart insights with them. And I'm just looking forward to talking to you about the books we've chosen for this year and going over kind of what we have coming up starting really soon because it's already, it's less than a month away for the kickoff in September.
Woohoo.
So we thought before we go too deep into the actual books, we just tell you a little bit about what these book clubs are. So from September to May for the academic year, 9 months, we offer a book a month. And that, well, two actually, one for tweens and one for teens. And every book club that you sign up for comes with a suggested reading schedule to help your learner stay on track, reading guides for each week of that reading schedule. So we kind of break the book roughly into fourths, depending on chapters and themes and things, and then give you a reading guide for each one of those. Writing and vocabulary activities to expand on additional skills, discussion board posts so that learners can interact throughout the month, supplemental links and resources to enhance interdisciplinary thinking, writing or multimodal final project prompts and rubrics. And we usually include at least 3, sometimes up to 5 different options on those, depending on what the text is about. And then a live Zoom discussion meeting and a recorded summary of that live discussion for anybody who can't make it or who wasn't able to read the book by the end of the month. And all of those also come with an optional feedback add-on so that you can, if you wanted to, whoever is facilitating it, me or Sabrina, can give your learner feedback on a rough and final draft of that final project prompt. And so the book clubs are $15 per month or $115. So you basically get one free if you bundle all of them. And then the feedback add-ons are an additional $30 to get the feedback. So that is kind of the overview of what we're doing. And we wanted to tell you a little bit about these books, starting with how we choose them. Do you want to talk a little bit about your philosophy behind picking books for this club?
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. So I grew up as a big fan of science fiction and fantasy, and I was a strong reader, but I kind of felt a little left out and a little bit alienated when I saw curricula that only emphasized the classics. It was all Shakespeare and the Odyssey and all of that. And so now that I'm an adult and I get choices, I choose books in fantasy, science fiction, speculative fiction genres, and I also focus on new and debut authors from diverse backgrounds, especially authors of color, but also from other types of backgrounds. For example, this year I have a an author who's a transcontinental adoptee as well as a debut author, and I also look at books that cover diverse characters and topics. This can include racial and ethnic representation, but also LGBTQIA plus representation. One of our books has a portrayal of an older woman as a hero character, which is also something you don't see. So that's been something that I've really tried to look at. Um, and my early tween books for this year were chosen to kind of try to be more inviting and accessible for possibly newer tween members of our club, possibly younger readers, since many of our tweens have graduated onto teen books. But I'm pretty flexible, and I think Michelle is also, as far as if people want to mix and match their books. We do run the teen books with an expectation that they are teens with the level of maturity that kind of comes with that. They sometimes bridge onto heavier topics, but we also know that we have very diverse learners with very diverse skill sets and interests as well.
Yeah, and I would say that in addition to considering those diverse perspectives and diverse characters and making sure that we have representation of authors and voices from a wide variety of backgrounds, one of the things that guides my decisions about these books is also diversity in formats and genres. So I try to make sure that I include, like you're going to see when we go through them here, I've got a graphic novel option. I've got some memoir, creative nonfiction. I've got a tale told in prose. And so just different ways of approaching reading, because I think that especially for learners who take multiple book clubs, by the time they get to the end of this, they've got exposure of diversity in so many different ways when it comes to learning how to read different formats, or how to think about things through different perspectives, or how to sympathize with different characters. And so I really do think that I'm proud of the collection we put together that gives learners different experiences for themselves as readers and experiences in terms of what voices they hear. And I think that we've done a good job of trying to make that a really powerful collection of text that would provide a wide range of jumping off points for future interests and for deeper study.
And they're also really fun.
They are. Yes, it's one of my favorite things is that I just get to read books all the time, and it's so great.
I know, and then I get to share books with people, and I have so many books that were close for this book club, and it was so hard trying to narrow it down just to these books.
I have a whole Goodreads that's just like future book club books, because they're
Oh,
always just
yes.
constant. I'm like, I only get 9. Um,
I've already started on next year's reading books.
yeah, I've got people who are like, "Can you redo some of the books you've done?" I'm like, "Yeah, but then I wouldn't get to read as many new books." So
But if there is a book that we've done in the past that you really wanna do with us, talk to us and we can work something out.
yes.
I'm more than happy to do a tutoring session or something because they're all so wonderful.
Yes, yes. And I was just reading an article about how good like YA literature is, and that, like people feel like they're not allowed to read it because it's not serious enough. And I'm like, there is some excellent. You don't have to be a young adult or have a career in it to have an excuse to read it. You could
Oh,
totally
yeah.
just read the books.
That's most of my reading is middle grade and YA, and there's so much good stuff out there now. All right, let's get to the books.
Let's jump in. Yeah. So starting with September, we're going to go through chronologically just each month, which tween and which teen selection. And as you'll be able to tell, we kind of trade off so that anybody who takes all of them in a certain age group will get experiences with both me and Sabrina. So I'm up first with September. Tween book club is Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson. I've been reading this one closely because it's coming up soon. So I'm starting to get those materials together. And I love Jacqueline Woodson's writing. I think that it is so powerful. This book is written in prose, which is so it's kind of like practice in reading that poetic form, but it's also a whole narrative. It's not just individual poems. So the story comes together through all of these flashpoints. It's told from the perspective of a young boy whose father was a sports hero, but is now suffering from CTE, and in kind of dealing with recognizing his father's sacrifice that he's given up from his body to play football. And it's really kind of getting into a lot of tough social issues, as well as talking about the emotional range of toughness for boys and men, which I think is a really powerful theme.
All right, so I'm starting off with The Art of Prophecy by Wesley Chu. It is his second series after The Lives of Tao, and I learned that Wesley Chu used to work, I think, as a stuntman, so he knows how to do fight scenes. And this book is such an amazing love letter to wuxia, which is Chinese martial arts genre. It's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, those types of things. People flying through the air, doing these amazing acrobatics and superhuman feats. That's kind of the wuxia genre. And it's he does such a great job with the badass fight scenes, but also he explores human relationships between mentors and students and family and lovers of many different diversities. He also uses the story to help us to question the assumptions about what we've been told. I'm rereading it now, and there's discussions about nationalism, for example, and about looking down on people of different ethnicities and different cultures. And it's just it is such an amazing book. And the main twist is that there was this prophesied hero who would kill the great Khan who is threatening this society. And the great Khan ends up dying. And so the but the hero never actually got to do his hero thing. And so the question is, what do you do when the prophecy is wrong? How does an entire society that's built on this idea, bringing up this great hero, deal with the fact that this prophecy didn't actually happen? And so this book is it is not specifically a YA book. It covers, a wide range of topics, but it has something for everyone. It has different perspectives, including an older woman who's this amazing general master of air war arts, and it has the chosen one who's a teenage boy, and it has assassins. It's got horse riders. It's got all sorts of great things in this, and so I think it's a great introduction to wuxia as a genre, looking at Chinese inspired literature and such. As a bonus, I have arranged a special live Q&A session with the author a week after the live meetings. Wes Chu has been great to talk with. He is so amazing and just so positive. So I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity. So that's another perk of these book clubs. Sometimes you get to talk to the author.
I think it's so great when the authors want to come in and talk. And I've almost without exception, anyone I've reached out to has just been so kind and so just invested in young learners, and it's great.
Oh yeah.
I will be leading the October Tween Book Club, which is a book called Wheels of Change by Sue Macy. This is a historical nonfiction book. It has lots of pictures, lots of artifacts. It's a very beautiful book with all these different pictures of women riding bicycles through the ages, and it ties the history of bicycles and women riding bicycles to the fight for women's rights in America. So it's kind of a lens into this larger history through one very specific incident of bike riding and kind of following that thread throughout. So I think that it's just a fun way to talk about how history is just the moments that make up our lives and the physical items that are part of them. So women's history through bicycles for October.
All right. Pirates. We all like pirates, right? Pirates are awesome. Well, this book gives us pirates, but for everyone, including Latinx and Black and LGBTQIA plus people. I love how this author brought in queer pirates, brought in diverse pirates, and he did a really good job of researching the history of the region that this is set in. And he paints a very realistic picture of the places and the people who would have been there. Because when we think of pirates, we usually think of, they were just, white Elizabethan people, but there was such a diversity of pirates. At the same time, what really sold this for me from the author was that he deliberately did not include real life historical pirates to be responsible, because unfortunately, a lot of historical pirates did engage in slavery and other really problematic practices. And so I love how this author is bringing in a diverse, amazing, awesome story about pirates, but also practicing responsibility as an author to not promote problematic historical figures. And this book is amazing. It's about acceptance. It's got a non-binary main character. It has magic. It has, just really amazing familial relationships, and it's a lot of fun.
For November, you are up for the tweens.
Okay, so November, I am going to offer The Firebird Song by Arne Flores. This is a debut book by Arne Flores, who is a transcontinental adoptee. And this is it's an epic fantasy, but it's such a gentle book for middle graders. It talks about magic and heroism and prophecies, all those kind of bread and butter things that you see in fantasy stories. But it also does some wonderful emotional work in exploring the importance of forgiveness and of hope in the face of bad things that have been done by people. And it features a boy and a girl as the main character, and they each kind of have their role to play. And it's just a really lovely story that I wish I had had when I was growing up, because it just brings in just some wonderful things. So I'm really looking forward to starting my tweens with this book.
And for the teens, I always like to offer one just kind of deep nonfiction, kind of that practice of the sort of reading they would need to do in interdisciplinary studies for like science classes and social studies classes and history classes. And so this year, that is Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin. There is a documentary that I have not watched yet, but I will before November, based on this book that I've heard is also phenomenal. And it is a close look into the comparative anatomy that it gives us the history of human evolution, tracing us all the way back to the fishes. And it is just a really, even though it is, a very science heavy book, it's also very accessible and interesting. So I think it's going to be a great chance for learners to practice their note-taking skills and practice the kinds of skills that they're going to need for a lot of those classes where they're reading a lot to learn the subjects. But it's also going to give us a lot of material for interesting discussions. And so I think it's going to be great for those who maybe like reading, but aren't always as interested in the sciences and nonfiction, or those who maybe don't like reading as much, but get more interested in the nonfiction. I think it can be a bridge either way. And I'm looking forward to going through it with them.
All right, for December, I am going to offer Gregor the Overlander by Suzanne Collins. You may recognize Suzanne Collins because she is the author of The Hunger Games, which I'm pretty sure everyone has read. But she wrote this series before The Hunger Games, and it's for middle grade readers, but it still explores those key themes about conflict and violence and war. There isn't anything about corporatization of media and consumerism and all of that, but those core ideas about how do we deal with conflicts and what is the impact of violence on us. She does it in such a wonderful way that I believe is much more appropriate for middle grade readers, because the Hunger Games can gets pretty intense, and so I think that this book is really good to help challenge readers with some big questions, and also helps you to build empathy through a lot of unlikely side characters. Just as a content warning, there are spiders and rats and cockroaches, basically the quote vermin that you would see in New York City, because that's where this is originally set. But I actually felt emotionally connected to a cockroach through her writing, and it was such a wonderful story. I really, really recommend this. And I kind of soft paired this book with the Firebird song because they both explore a lot of those themes about conflict and violence and emotional connections. So I'm really looking forward to this.
As a Kafka fan, I'm always here for sympathizing with the cockroaches, right? Um, so in December, I will be offering for the teens, The Humans by Matt Haig. This book is I intend it to pair with Your Inner Fish from November. You could take them separately. You don't have to take them both, but Your Inner Fish is a very anatomy driven, physical, what does it mean to be human? How did your body get the way that it got through evolution? And The Humans tells the story of an alien who has been sent to Earth to kill and embody the body of a human who has discovered something that will allow for interplanetary travel. And the aliens don't want humans to have that because they are considered like a locust, like species that's going to take all the resources. And so he comes with this idea that humans are just greed driven, awful, we have to stop them. But once he starts embodying a human body and interacting with other people, he starts to see humans through a different light. And so I think it's a really interesting way of looking at what makes us human, not in terms of our anatomy and evolution, but in terms of our social connections and philosophical underpinnings. And I think that together, those two books give a really interesting conversation about what does it mean to be human. So I'm hoping that some of the teams that take both of them will get to kind of explore those themes and the tensions and interactions between them.
Also, in that book, humans are the cockroaches.
Yes, full circle. In January, I will be doing The Way of the Hive, a honeybee's story by Jay Hassler. I am excited. I'm actually I don't know if you can see this very well, but it is a graphic novel. And so it is a nonfiction graphic novel that follows the actual life cycle of a honeybee, from egg all the way through the end of life. And it's just got these really beautiful illustrations that are really nicely done. So it's a very close look at a bee and how honeybees interact with the world through this gorgeous way of telling. I think it's really nice to see that nonfiction can be presented in graphic novel form. And it also has this narrative to it because there is an individual bee that we're following through their life cycle, and they're kind of given personified emotions about confusion or trying to figure out where they fit in their hive. And so it's a really interesting take on different genre and format reading that I'm looking forward to going through with the tweens.
All right, January is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. So I usually try not to repeat authors for the same tier of book club, but Margaret Owen does such a good job of showing how societies are built on structural oppression. And her previous series, The Merciful Crow, is one of my favorite series because of how she explores that. I chose this book primarily because a lot of my students have been asking for more representation of like asexual and demisexual characters, and that's pretty hard to find in YA. And this features not one but two demisexual protagonists, and does it in such a wonderful way while also having some great queer relationships. The main character has two moms who happen to be gods, and has a lot of just wonderful side characters. It's what you would call a quote queer norm world where no one bats an eye at same gender relationships. There's a few non-binary side characters as well. So this author does such a great job with that. In addition, this is another modern day fairy tale that's set in a very clearly Germanic setting. So not just kind of a generic European-ish, medieval-ish, but very specifically Germanic. And you see this in the language and the culture and the food. And I really appreciate her precision in making that setting very clear. But she also brings in classic fairy tale tropes and turns them around, makes sure that the characters, especially the girl characters, have agency, and just really does a great job in bringing out some very positive themes while also showing how the characters deal with trauma. I really appreciated how the author included a kind of a content trauma acknowledgement in the beginning of the book, because we know that content warnings are more common now. And so the author included one in the book, recognizing that many of her readers may struggle with some of these topics, but that also some of her readers may want to be able to read and feel affirmed by seeing these empowering stories. And so this is a really wonderful book for a lot of different types of representation.
And you'll be with the tweens in February.
Excellent. So You Want to Be a Wizard by Diane Duane. This book has a very interesting story. This was originally written around 1997, and notably before another famous Wizarding School series. There were many other books about people learning how to become wizards, and this was one of those series. Uh, this series became basically this really convoluted multiverse that has a separate series with cat wizards. It has all sorts of different types of beings besides humans who can use magic in all these different ways. So this series really defies genres. It both has fantasy elements because of magic, but it's also very science fiction-y because you can have a white hole who is sapient be a wizard as well. So there it is, just such a whimsical and strange and creative book that this author does. And the author actually revised all of her books to clean up the timeline and also update a little bit of the technology to set these books starting in like the early 2000s, the new Millennium Edition, which I really appreciated from the author in terms of just trying to make it more accessible for newer readers. And another great thing that that's in this is the main character is basically taking a correspondence course. So she's basically homeschooling how to be a wizard instead of going to a wizarding school. And so this is just such a refreshing change of pace from all those other wizarding school stories. And I hope that you'll join me for it.
Unfortunately, I decided that the world needed us to read Fahrenheit 451 this year. I love Ray Bradbury, and Fahrenheit 451 is an excellent, kind of classic novel about book burning and censorship. I regret that it has become so incredibly relevant once again, as we are seeing book bans happen all across the United States. And I definitely will use this month's book club to talk about those current events and draw those connections. And I do think this also gives learners practice in reading a book that is maybe just a little more challenging and dense because of the time that it was written and some of the language choices that Bradbury uses and the style. So I think it'll offer great practice in reading some of those more classic types of writing that they're going to encounter in, college literature classes. So I think this is a great opportunity for that as well.
When dystopian fiction becomes current events.
Right. Oh, I'm excited about this one.
All right. So The Last Quillantista by Dana Barbara Higuera. Quillantista means a storyteller. So The Last Storyteller is one of the most amazing science fiction books that I've read, and it's for middle graders. I've been trying to find more science fiction, and it's a little difficult to find age-appropriate books because there's a lot of mature issues that are involved. This book does cover some big existential questions. Spoiler alert, Earth gets destroyed. And so there's the last survivors of the human race trying to go and find a new home. So it's pretty heavy, but it is handled in such a wonderful way. It this story one of the core themes is about how many people are tending to value STEM and science, which is absolutely good. I'm a science technology scholar, but valuing STEM over the humanities and not valuing the stories that we share and that we tell across generations. And so the main character is struggling with this because her parents are both scientists and they don't value how she loves to tell stories like her grandmother. This protagonist also has a visual disability, and she actually has to deal with it throughout the book, and it's done in a respectful but a realistic sort of way. And the questions about diversity and sameness and equality, can we be equal while still being diverse, those are also explored, and it's all done at a really great middle grade sort of level. So it is absolutely profound and totally wonderful.
That one, the one you were just talking about, my daughter's reading it with you. She's doing all the tween book clubs, but that one in particular, I'm like, we're going to read that one together because I want to read it too.
Don't spoil it.
No spoilers. So in March, The Teens, this one is designed to pair with Fahrenheit 451. It is a more modern dystopian look called The Future Will Be BS Free, in which a group of teens creates a machine that is a perfect lie detector, but then really kind of causes some complications about, do we need a world where people can lie to function? How do lies function in our society? And it really kind of starts to make you question the age of information and what responsibility you have for sharing information, what responsibility you have for examining the information as it is shared to you, and what determines truth versus lie. So I think it's going to be a really deep and interesting discussion, wrapped up in a pretty entertaining story about those concerns of information and truth and censorship. And I think that it will open up some really great conversations. For April, I will be with the tweens to read The Outsiders. This is another kind of classic tale. This one was written by S.E. Hinton when she started writing it when she was just 17 years old. So I think that the voice that really captures some of those feelings of what it's like to be a teenager or a tween trying to figure out your place in the world and feeling like an outsider, definitely tackles a lot of class struggle, but I think that can map onto a lot of any kind of outsider status and trying to figure out where you belong. Is just really going to relate to teens a lot. We will also use this to talk about some classic literary devices like symbolism and character development. And this one, as you'll see in a moment, is also going to pair with a more modern take on some of the same topics in May. So it's another one of those kind of classics modern pairings.
All right, April, continuing the theme of sci-fi spring, which I ended up doing for both book clubs. I'm going to feature Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. So this book is a record setter in winning the Hugo, Nebula, and Arthur C. Clarke and British Science Fiction Association awards. It's referred to as getting the Triple Crown in addition to the British award. And this novel is weird, but in a great way. And it will be a challenge for our readers. It was a challenge for me. There are multiple timelines going on in this book. So there's kind of the flashback timeline to the past, and then there's the current day timeline. In addition, the author plays a lot with pronouns and gender norms and expression because you have multiple cultures on different planets that all have different ways of presenting gender, for example. And the main character is basically an AI. And the AI comes from a particular culture where they handle gender in a certain way, such that the AI basically refers to everyone as she by default. And that the AI struggles to go, okay, wait, let me see what are the cues for this race? What are, what marks them as female, what marks them as male? And this AI struggles with this throughout this book. And I found it to be very relatable in many ways, for struggling with social cues and figuring out how are you supposed to refer to somebody and all of that, while also challenging kind of what we may think of as how gender is displayed. That if we look at different cultures in a science fiction context, there could be all different ways. And there are some really deep moral questions about empire, imperialism, and about violence and power explored in this as well. So it is a very challenging book, and that's why I'm going to pair it with a book that's kind of a nice palate cleanser, but no less profound.
And my final book of the book club will be in May for the tweens. Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus. This is told from the perspective of a 13-year-old who was born without arms. So it is talking about kind of disability, ability lenses, and kind of outsider status, but also gets into some class issues. So in that way, I think it pairs very well with The Outsiders, but is a more modern take on it. And I think that it will do a great job of allowing us to discuss realistic fiction and the role of realistic fiction and how somebody handles that from their writing choices. How does realistic fiction differ from some of the more fantastical elements that we read? And so I'm looking forward to diving into those.
And that takes place in Arizona, doesn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because
I think they're road tripping some, but a lot,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's a cactus there. Excellent. All right. So my final book, The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Schrieffer. This book blew my mind. If your student is on my Discord, they've probably seen me ranting and raving about this book. It is science fiction in all the good ways. It's not just space travel, which is very common in science fiction, but it includes the physics and the problems involved in it, making it hard science fiction, much like The Expanse. It talks about relativistic motion. It talks about acceleration. It talks about all of these things. There is a mystery thriller plot. Avoid spoilers for this book, please. Just read this book without any spoilers. You will thank me for it, and just go along for the ride. There is an AI that is very reminiscent of 2001: A Space Odyssey's HAL. There is a deep, compelling relationship between two young men from these two competing nations. And what I love is that even though this book was billed as a gay romance, it's more than that. Yes, there are romantic elements. Yes, there's some infatuation in it, but it shows long-term growth of a very deep human relationship. And so it's something that I think is so important for us to see, especially with young men, being featured in terms of having these deep, complex emotions and connections going on. So this book, it's once you get through it, you just feel emotionally drained in a good way. And I decided to close out this year's book club with this because it gives us that emotional closure and leaves us with some really just thoughtful questions about, what are the big things in life. And so I'm really, really looking forward to finishing out with this.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening to us talk about these book selections and the book club offerings that are here for the 2023-2024 year. We really hope that you'll choose to join us for some or all of these. You are welcome to pick and choose just your favorites. I think this is an excellent way to get more reading and writing into your homeschool practice without a whole lot of juggling of schedules. It's very flexible. It's kind of take what you want and leave what you don't situation. So we have some families that just read the book and show up and do the discussion, and others that use every single supplemental material and worksheet and everything that we give and make it a really deep part of their reading and writing curriculum. So there's really a lot of flexibility for you to make it your own. I'm keeping an eye out to see if we have any questions. I don't see any so far, but if anybody does have any, we're more than happy to answer anything you have about it.
Michelle, I actually have been going through all of the places that we've shared this video throughout C and have been writing down questions
Oh,
from
great.
people.
Excellent. Cat's so amazing.
Thank you.
Our first question is, you each mentioned that some of the books that you've selected you've paired with other books. Do you feel that it's required to do both of those months, or would a child be able to do just one without missing out on anything?
They could absolutely do just one without missing out on anything. I'm very mindful of that somebody might just be taking that one without the pairing. So usually what I do is include a sheet of like discussion questions or prompts, or one of the final project options will be a comparison, but it'll make a note at the top, like, if you did both books, consider this. And it's sort of a supplemental piece of material that's in there. I don't make the assumption that people have read both.
Yeah, same goes for me. What I've been doing for my project prompts lately is I'll have one project prompt be compare some elements of this book to another book, suggested some other books in the book clubs that it may have been paired with. So it's always optional, and also because we're not evaluating based on your full completion of all the materials. It's completely up to you. But yeah, for both of us, it's basically just adding in an extra opportunity to do some comparisons, which is also a very important skill to be able to read across multiple texts.
Next question is, what's the youngest age you feel is good for the tween book club?
I think we have 9 on there technically. I would say not all of the books are going to be accessible and interesting to most 9-year-olds, but I also know that we have a wide range of neurodiversities and giftedness. So we put that at the low end to, allow parents the flexibility to meet their kids' needs. I think that most of the time, starting with like a mature 10 is probably about where the tweens start.
Our next question also has to do with age and the tween book club.
Can I add real
Absolutely.
quick? Yeah, so it's just as Michelle said, there's a wide range of developmental skills and levels. Basically, if they want it's kind of, if they want to just read the book and do the guides, then whatever age works for you. And we recommend that you would pre-screen the books if they're on the younger end. If they want to attend the live meetings, then I at least have the expectation that they can do a 1-hour Zoom meeting with multiple people talking, be able to do turn taking and those sorts of things. So if they struggle with that and they're on the younger end, then either assisting them, giving them some supervision, or maybe considering not doing the live meeting because it won't really bring them too much. That's something to consider. So because it's very flexible, it gives you options to kind of choose what best fits your learners' needs and capabilities at the time.
Well, thank you. The next question is also about the tween book club and ages. They say, I have a younger teen who's almost 14, but most of the tween books seem like they would be a better fit. Because it's the tween club, would they still be able to participate in the live meetings, even though they're technically a teenager?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I just asked that, keeping in mind, some things that might be appropriate to discuss in a teen level class may be a little less appropriate to talk about in a tween level class, as long as they're aware of that and aware that the other participants are mostly going to be tweens and may have, a slightly different way of seeing the world. As long as they're okay with that, that's fine.
And I would say, just from my experience, a lot of homeschooled kids are used to those sort of mixed age groups anyway. And so I have not had any issues with, a younger teen joining in with the tweens or an older tween joining in with the teens. It has seemed to be fine.
Our next question is about, can kids do both clubs or pick and choose, or from each of the clubs, or do they need to kind of pick tween or pick teen and stick with it?
Yes and no.
Yes, they could definitely pick and choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would just say, if you're doing that, just be mindful of content, because some of the teen books, like I would say like The Humans by Matt Haig is definitely a more mature selection. And we put content notes on the pages. So when you go to sign up for them, there's content notes at the bottom of each one. Just if you're picking and choosing, just make sure you're being aware of the kind of those content levels and making sure it's a good fit for your family.
Michelle, we have someone who said that they saw on the C website that you are speaking about unit studies, turning a book into unit studies for middle school and high school at the C conference this coming weekend. They wanted to know if they sign their kids up for the teen book club, will you be giving parents suggestions on how to do that for those specific books?
I mean, a lot of what I'm talking about in there is what I do to create the materials for the book clubs. So, I mean, I hope that you don't have to do a whole lot of it, because I hope you can just use the materials that we've created for you if you've signed up for the book clubs. So it will be, you know, how to do an extension activity on this, how to turn this into some vocabulary lessons. Now, you might not, because I usually only do like one vocabulary or writing activity. If you wanted to make it your, you know, whole month's worth of materials and do something each week, then you might want to add some more things. We offer like a lot of supplemental choices. So if you wanted to then add some writing prompts about those or things, you could maybe do that. But I think that you will get the materials to turn any one of these into a unit study if you wanted to.
Yeah, just to add, my books, I've been realizing that I take more of a social studies approach. This past year was very diverse culturally, and so I gave history about China and history about the Hmong people, and so I included very extensive resource links. So those would be very easy to turn into learning lessons, that there's a huge amount of information there, and it's like, oh, you can, you know, learn about Hmong dances, for example. And so that's yeah, again, it's a lot of, even if we don't have like, you know, a whole bunch of lesson plans, we have a lot of material that we put in there that will be very easy and save you a lot of time and effort in terms of the research.
And on top of that, I would say if they attend your talk, Michelle, and get some suggestions on how to build those out, and they need like specific resources in addition, if they were to go post in the C group and say, I need a history resource or a science resource related to XYZ topic from this book, I'm sure they'd have about 100 suggestions in an hour.
Absolutely. That group is fantastic for suggestions.
Yeah, and they can also, you know, come and ask in our book club groups too, if there's you know, if we have other ideas for what to do with the books. So
Absolutely. We have a couple of questions. If you could go into a bit more detail about the additional assignments and things that come with the book clubs and how those are presented.
Yeah, it kind of varies. We both sort of lean on our own backgrounds and expertise and interest when we do those. Mine tend to be like a vocabulary activity or a specific grammar rule. Like, you know, I'll use, because I believe that grammar should be taught in context, that it's a lot more memorable and interesting if you're, you know, not just getting random sentences about nothing that you've ever thought about, but these are sentences from the book, or we're looking directly at how the author used these grammatical structures and then writing some of our own. So like, for instance, I've done one on like how to use commas with dialogue tags using examples from the book, or how to look at the root words of these vocabulary choices and things like that. I've also done more kind of higher order concern, like characterization, looking at descriptions and how do characters get described, and then having students practice that themselves. So it's usually some version of look at how this was played out in the book, and then experiment with it yourself. The links and resources vary depending on the topic, but usually a combination of websites, videos, maybe movie or TV show recommendations. And then the final projects are usually a combination of sort of classic essay prompts and multimodal, like create a piece of art or create a video, those sorts of things.
yeah, so as I mentioned, my focus tends to be kind of more on a social studies sort of level. I do talk a little bit about genres and tropes where it's appropriate, especially for fairy tale stories or stories that are retellings. We oftentimes tend to lean on those a lot. for the tween books, I usually try to include at least 1 or 2 project prompts that are about socio-emotional learning. So, you know, getting a learner to reflect on their emotions about certain things that happen in the book, and then, you know, connect with the character. That's a big thing that I know is very important, building empathy. I also will tend to include a lot of resources about the cultural context. So, for example, the art of prophecy, I would include a lot about wuxia as a genre, as well as Chinese history and Chinese geography. And the learning activities will oftentimes be scaffolding. So they'll be, look at some of these resources and pull out, 3 things that you've learned and talk about it. And then sometimes that will scaffold into the final project prompt as well. And so it really varies depending on the particular book and the subject matter. It's kind of a pleasant surprise, but it really gives a lot of exposure to different cultures and different sorts of ideas. And so between our 2 styles of approaches, I think you get a lot of great opportunities to learn about many different topics.
Our next couple of questions actually are about your live meetings. Do you require cameras to be on during your live meetings?
No.
I hate being on camera. So I completely empathize with my students who don't feel like being on camera. I would rather they not be on camera and hang out. Mics are also optional for my meetings because I'm a gamer. I'm used to like looking at text as well. So if they don't feel like talking, that's totally fine. I let them, contribute to the chat. I just ask that we practice, no spamming rules and all of that. But I very much encourage students to feel comfortable and to feel safe in these meetings. We don't distribute the live recordings anywhere because these book clubs are very big, and just to protect student privacy. But it's also, they should have a right to not be on camera if they don't feel like it. I do ask, we do ask that they, respect the meeting and, avoid disruptions and such. But yeah, I would absolutely support that.
Yeah, same. I don't require camera or mics. I encourage it when I come on. I'm like, hey, it's really fun to see you and hear from you. But if you're not feeling it today, or if that's just not your style, that's fine. Often if I have a student who's signed up for multiple months of the book club that isn't feeling comfortable early on, like I'll notice that they'll start to, maybe turn their camera on just to say something now and then, or maybe get a little bit more interactive as time goes on and they get more comfortable with our group. But it's never required, because the most important thing to me is that they're participating in a way that works for them.
Our next question is about students being able to interact outside of that live meeting. Do you have any way for the students to talk while they're reading the book before that meeting happens?
Yes. So I use the discussion boards that are threaded directly on the Teachable platform where we house these. So throughout the month, there is a discussion board, and I separate those into the weeks, but they're all posted from the beginning so that somebody who has gone ahead and read the whole book in the first week can talk about the ending. I just ask them, like, don't spoil past chapter this for this one. And here is the thread where you can talk about all of it, so that learners can make sure they don't get spoiled if they're participating in each thread. And I also offer an off-topic chat just with some guidelines to keep it, class friendly, so that if they want to talk about their Minecraft games and talk about their pets, that they have a place they can do that as well.
Yes, I have a Discord server for students and former students, and it's a lot of them love being on there. I have some other social channels for cooking and whatnot. The book club channels specifically, I do the same thing as Michelle. I have 4 separate channels, one for each section of the book, because we do have some really fast readers, and I totally appreciate them. They're very good about self-policing on not spoiling each other, on learning how to use spoiler tags, which is part of good digital citizenship. I also have an off-topic channel specific for the book club, as well as channels for the live projects and for the live discussion. And I love it when people want to interact and discuss before the meetings, because the meetings they're only an hour and there's always so much discussion to have. And so I love it when we have opportunities to discuss during the month. Activity can vary. It's basically dependent on people coming in and participating. I do try to post prompts, but I don't want to to pester students. I don't want to spam them too much. So I don't like try to tag them and try to push them to interact. But it's important for the students to remember that the Discord is there to interact with. But I think that it's really good for people to be able to practice, when do they need some space away from it? When do they want to jump on and be interactive? And so, yeah, it's absolutely great to have.
And our final question is about the Teen Book Club. They'd like to know, is there any kind of rubric included so that parents who want to use this as a core part of their teens' literature studies and need to be able to give high school credit can figure out how to assign that properly if they use all of the additional materials you include?
So we include rubrics with all the final writing project prompts, which you could do more than one of them if you wanted to make it a fuller and more robust thing that goes throughout. And there's a rubric to help for grading each of those. I would say that you could just sort of assign points based on how it fits into your own, matrix of assignments for that month. If that is all the assignments for that month, like how does that fit in with the rest of your semester, those sorts of things for any of those other activities. And you could also use the reading guides as like, I never make them required. Students don't have to turn them in, but they are pretty robust note-taking things. So you could use that as a way to gauge that as well. So I think you could definitely, there's lots of materials there you could use for an evaluation, for a portfolio to show artifacts of completion if you needed to for your records.
And adding on to what Michelle said, our reading guides, we include both comprehension questions and we call them thinking questions. And so the comprehension questions are just pretty clear cut, what are the three empires in this world or whatever. The thinking questions are kind of more of, do you trust this character, or what do you think about so-and-so's actions? And so having both of those types of questions in the reading guide should give you a lot of ways to be able to assess completion and assess different types of skills.
Well, that is all of the questions we have. We do have several other comments that have come in from people who are really appreciative of the time and effort that you put into creating a really diverse year of reading for students, and other people who are really excited to have some classics mixed in with some new authors that they've never heard of before. And I agree. You all put together every year such a wonderful list of books. I do not have a kid in the age range for your clubs anymore. But I have been reading along with some of your book selections the last 2 years myself, and they're really excellent. So thank you both so much.
Thank
I
you.
hope that you have an amazing year of book clubs. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave everyone with?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who lets us be a part of your homeschooling journey. I adore the kids from this community. It is just so much fun to talk about books.
I love our discussions, and yeah, our readers, they're the high point of my day. Sometimes I come in going, oh no, are they going to get it? And they come in and they say, wow, this book was amazing. And it was just it's just so affirming and so exciting to get to see them connecting with all of these different types of books in ways that I wasn't expecting. And that just truly makes me happy to be able to share our love of reading with them.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. And for everyone watching.
My husband always makes, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead, Michelle.
So I was just going to say, my husband always makes fun of me because the day before the live discussions, I'm always like, is it enough slides? I don't know. What if they don't talk? What if we, and then I always only get through like half of them because the discussions are so robust and so interesting with these kids. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't need all that. So I'm always over prepared.
Well, for everyone watching at home who wants to go back and look through this year's book selections and get your kids signed up, the link to the teen and tween book clubs at Dela Learning is in the chat below this video, and everywhere that C has shared this video, it is in the comments as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a fantastic year of reading for 2023-2024.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.